saving just $10,000 has completely changed my life.
Second financial milestone is just $10,000.
Saving your first $10,000 will change your life. It will make it better.
£10,000 isn't just a number.
3 years ago, I was talking to my financial mentor. He sat me down, looked me straight in the eyes and said, Dean, you've got to stop obsessing over making £1 million. And before you even say it, forget about any so-called get-rich-quick schemes. Instead, focus on paying off all of your debt and saving your first £10,000. That needs to be your only goal for now. At the time, I thought, sure, that's easy for you to say, you're already rich. But after doing exactly that and looking back now, I realised why that piece of advice has changed my life so profoundly. Today, I will break down 6 fundamental reasons why hitting that first £10,000 completely transformed your financial life and how it's actually the key to building wealth in the long run. Reason number 1 is breaking through the first wealth barrier. Alright, the first big reason is all about psychology, and honestly, this is the biggest thing that stops people achieving financial success, themselves and their heads. Hitting that £10,000 mark shatters a massive mental barrier, as all of a sudden the idea of saving $15,000 or $20,000 doesn't sound like a joke anymore, it becomes extremely realistic. Psychologists have a term for this, self-efficacy. Albert Bandura, a psychologist who studies self-efficacy, found that breaking down big goals into small achievable steps helps us to believe in ourselves and stay motivated. Honestly, it's like getting a car for the first time and trying to drive. It's absolutely petrifying. However, with some persistence and through a few 1-hour lessons and by learning how to drive, it becomes extremely enjoyable and actually empowering. That is the kind of transformation that happens when you hit your first £10,000. For me, when growing up and thinking I'd ever see 4 digits in my bank account was mind-blowing. To give you some context, I used to hustle in school by selling items on eBay and working multiple part-time jobs at the same time. Even though I was making a decent amount of money for a teenager, I was thinking in terms of a few £100s at most. When I finally saw my bank balance hit £10,000, it was like I'd entered a new dimension of possibility. I thought, if I can do this, maybe 20,000 or even 50,000 isn't a fantasy. And the funny thing, studies actually show people are more motivated by round numbers. So when you go from 9,999 to 10,000, something magical happens. Those zeros hit differently, it's like a badge of honor. Reason number 2 is momentum for the next financial milestone. So let's talk about the snowball effect. Your first £10,000 is like starting a snowball at the top of a hill. At first it's small, just a handful of snow rolling along, but as it picks up more snow, it starts moving faster and growing bigger. Pretty soon, it's not just a snowball, it's a full-blown avalanche. To break this down into a worked example for you, imagine you'll start at 0 and you're saving £1,000 a year, and you're investing with a 10% return. It might take around 7.3 years to hit that first £10,000. And you think, 7.3 years for £10,000, that is not good enough. But here's where the magic of momentum comes in. The next £10,000 doesn't take another 7.3 years, it only takes 4.25 years. Because now you're not starting from 0 and your investments are generating returns on top of your contributions. To this effect, the next £10,000 only takes another 3 years and so on. This momentum effect is something that most people don't realise. They think that you have to grind just as hard for the next 10,000, but in reality, that keeps getting easier and quicker. It's like doing the opposite of push-ups. Instead of getting more tired, as you go, you actually get stronger. If only that was true for workouts, eh? To this point, I remember chatting with a friend who'd finally managed to save £10,000, and he told me he felt like he'd unlocked a new level in life. Suddenly, he was motivated to put more into his investment account because he saw that snowball effect happening in real life. And this is the beauty of reaching this milestone. You don't have to wait forever to see your results. You're seeing the power of compounding interest at work in real time. I personally find this when dollar cost averaging and investing in ETFs such as the S&P 500. These are results of a small set and forget account that I have where I invest £25 a week. As you can see, since April, my investment is up 13.25% and it's started to curve like a hockey stick. This, my friends, is a small example of how compound interest works in real life. Reason number 3 is building an emergency buffer for peace of mind. You've probably heard of Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And life, as you probably know, has a funny way of throwing curveballs at you when you think things are going well. That's why having a £10,000 emergency fund is such a game changer. It's like a financial cushion you can rely on when life decides to kick you in the shins, or even worse, in the balls. Having that £10,000 emergency fund isn't just about covering expenses, it's about freeing up your mental energy. When you're not stressing about every little expense, you can actually focus on things that matter, like your health, your goals, and achieving financial success. Reason number 4 is better returns on your investment. Alright, here's a fun one. When you've got a bit of money to invest, the returns actually start to make a difference. Picture this, if you invest £10 and make a 10% return, you've earned £1. Not exactly something to celebrate, right? But with £10,000, a 10% return means you're looking at £1,000. That is an actual chunk of money that you can be proud of. And here's the kicker. You took on the same level of risk, waited the same amount of time, but because you started with more, you got a bigger reward. I call this the rich get richer effect. It's like those loyalty programs you sign up for. The more you spend, the better your rewards. Investors that reach that £10,000 mark start seeing their returns pile up in ways that aren't possible with smaller amounts. And honestly, once you start to experience this, you'll start thinking bigger. What if I can save 20,000, 50,000, etc.? It's all about making your money work harder, not you. Reason number 5 is freedom from high interest debt. Now, let's talk about high interest debt. The monster lurking under so many people's beds. Credit card debt, payday loans, and store cards. These are the financial equivalent of quicksand. The average credit APR these days is over 20%, which can crush your hope of building wealth if you're not careful. Even 0% debt erodes your monthly buying power and can destroy your ability to generate wealth. A friend of mine learned this the hard way. He went on a stag trip to Vegas, and whilst he has what he calls a sick time, he got carried away swiping his credit card, and now he's paying the price. When he got home, he realised he was buried under a mountain of debt, including ridiculous forex fees, and the interest was piling up faster than he could pay it off. The worst part is he had no savings to cover it, so he ends up paying more in interest than he spent on the holiday itself. If you've got £10,000 saved up, you're in a different position. You're able to cover expenses without turning to credit, which keeps you from falling into a debt trap, something that hits so many people. And if you do have debt, that £10,000 can go a long way towards paying it down and saving you thousands in interest over time. This is something that I would highly recommend, by the way. Reason number 6 is building good financial habits. Finally, we get to what's probably the most important part of this. Building solid financial habits. Reaching your first £10,000 isn't just about having cash on hand, it's about what it represents. It's proof that you've learned how to budget, save, and manage your money effectively. There's a concept called the habit loop in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. This is something that's stuck with me for years. He talks about the cycle of cue, routine, and reward. Say your goal is to save £100 every month. You might set a reminder, cue. Transfer that money into your savings account, routine, and then look at your balance growing over time, and that's the reward. This habit building is a secret source of long-term financial success, and here's where it gets interesting. Once you've mastered the basics, scaling from 10,000 to 100,000 to 1 million becomes so much easier. And one of the funniest things about building habits is that you'll start to see the world differently. You'll laugh when you see ads for get rich quick schemes or instant wealth, because you know that real wealth isn't about shortcuts, it's about discipline and consistency. Believe me, I've fallen for this in the past, I just haven't told my mentor. Final thoughts, the big picture. So, once you've hit that first £10,000, you've done more than save some cash. You've laid the foundation for serious financial growth. This first phase might be the toughest, but it's also the most transformative. It's like a rite of passage into the world of personal finance. In the words of legendary investor Charlie Munger, the first 100k is a bitch, but you gotta do it. The same principle applies with £10,000. Once you've built that initial base, compounding takes over and your wealth starts to grow in ways that require less work on your part and in ways that you never could imagine. And here's the real kicker. In today's world of rising living costs, having a solid financial basis gives you the edge. With all of the investment tools that we have at our fingertips now, it's easier than ever to grow that first £10,000 into something truly life-changing. So if you're at the beginning of your financial journey, remember this. Keep grinding towards that first £10,000. Don't get distracted by flashy investments or promises of easy money. Focus on building good habits, managing your expenses, and steadily growing your savings. Because once you've reached that milestone, the next steps become a whole lot easier. Your journey might feel slow at the start, but every pound you save and invest is a step closer to financial freedom. Keep going, keep believing, and someday you'll look back at that first £10,000 and realise it was the start of something incredible, just like I've done.